We are continuing this morning with our study in the life of Christ, and we're going to spend a lot of time in the early chapters. And I have you reading some other chapters that will go along with our daily readings. Interwoven with Jesus' ministry to these people was the message, I am coming. And the key to this message was in the Old Testament. And the passages are repeatedly saying, it is written, it is written. In the past, God spoke to our fathers through the prophets in many times and in various ways. But in these last days, he has spoken to us in the Son. Hebrews 1 and 2. Now, this first chapter of Hebrews begins with the origin of Jesus. And the origin was the prophets revealing him. Hebrews 1 mentions the speaking of God through prophets. And just what did they say? The prophets spoke about the birth, as to the place, date, method, family origin, his childhood, growing up in all the younger years and where he lived, not in as much detail as the ministry. And of course the ministry, the type of ministry he'd have, the message, all his disciples. The prophet spoke about Judas and really how horrible he was. He spoke about his miracles, his rejection, a lot of detail about his death, who was involved, the method, the circumstances, the last words, the thoughts on the cross. We have more information on in the Psalms on Jesus' words on the cross than we do in the Gospels. And finally, the burial, his place of burial and the type of burial. Therefore, I'm going to study the life of Christ from the very beginning. And we have to begin in Matthew. Not in Matthew, I'm sorry, in Genesis. Genesis is the beginning of the life of Christ. And how many Jesus sightings are there? And what do we learn about this man who's born in a stable and died on a cross? Just from Genesis alone, and we're not going to go into a detailed study, we know he created everything. He made Eve so that man would not be alone. He understands relationships. He walked in the garden with Adam and Eve. He heard them when they heard him walking. Notice it says they heard him walking, not heard his voice, heard him walking. They hid. He looked for them after they sinned, and he called out to them. He told them the results of their sin. He drove them out of the garden. He made a promise that the woman would give birth to a baby without a man and save man from his sin. The seed of woman does not exist unless there's a virgin birth. Jesus in the garden had a plan for man, and that is the Garden of Eden. He couldn't live with man's sin, so he provided a way to buy man back. We call it redemption. Redemption is an economic term. Over and over again, Jesus was involved with the man whom he created. Throughout the Old Testament, I am coming, I am coming. I will continue the ministry I began long ago. He wanted to be with his people. It was Jesus who was personally involved with Noah, Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, and Joseph. Where is your Jesus? Is he personally involved with you, or do you just visit him on Sunday? This is a great question we need to ask ourselves every day. It was Jesus who called men to serve, upheld the role of women as mothers. He offered his protection to the women of old, and he would someday offer it to a Jewish servant girl. It was Jesus in the wilderness who led his people to the promised land. It was Jesus who was the captain of the Lord's army in the book of Joshua that brought victory in battle. It was Jesus who put Samson's parents in a state of wonder. It was Jesus who chose kings and priests. It was Jesus who established the Jewish religious system, basing it on heaven itself. All of this Jesus did in order to cry out, in order to have the people cry out, crucify him, crucify him. As we look at the life of Christ, we give you an opportunity to keep his life going. That is why we are called by his name, Christian. He laid down his body to take up ours. The church is not an institution. It's not a club. It's not a corporation. It is the living, breathing body of Jesus on this earth. What Jesus did in Genesis to create, he now continues to recreate. We call it recreation. He's recreating us. And that sounds like a fun thing, recreation. We invite you today to participate in this recreation. We invite you today to become part of the local body. Become one of its members. We all fit together. We're going to continue on next week and looking at the life of Christ. But remember the message of the Old Testament, I am coming, and that Jesus was actively involved with all the characters of the Old Testament.